Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today. I appreciate it. It's good to see you again. It's good to be with you. We've got a great guest today, a personal friend, a mentor, and somebody who you're probably going to see if you attend some of the national conventions. That's Scott Cullen. Hi, Scott. How are you today?
I'm just great. Thank you very much, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Oh, sure. We're glad you're here. Now, Scott, take it for those of you for those four or five people in real estate or who don't know who you are. Go ahead and take a couple of minutes, explain, where you're from, what you do, the work you've got going on, etc. And then we're going to get into some questions that you and I have already talked about before we got started.
Well, I'm a residential appraiser, a certified residential appraiser in Eagan, Minnesota. I like to say that's the home of the Minnesota Vikings. They built a new facility where Northwest Airlines used to have their headquarters. If you remember Northwest, now they're part of Delta. So there was some beautiful land, and they built their new facility, and that's where the Vikings operate. We're just south of St. Paul, about 5 miles, not very far from the metro, or we're in the metro, a little bit outside the city limits. About 8 years ago, a friend of mine had just been retired by the state of Minnesota because he was too old. He was 70 or 63. I think that was too old for the state. So for you young people out there, I would suggest getting a job with the state. But John was he started out his he was in the military in the Vietnam War, and he tested into a position in military intelligence. He's a very smart guy, understands pattern recognition, and his career in the federal or in the state government was usually law enforcement, and he rose to the point where he was the director of enforcement for alcohol and gambling licenses. So he's a very smart guy, but he was retired looking for something to do, and he asked me if appraisers needed anything in the area of data processing or databases. And I said, John, we really do. We're being asked to support our adjustments, and I can't figure out how multiple regression works. And he said, well, let me take a look at it. And I gave him this data set, and we got some pretty crazy results out of multiple regression. And before we figured out why that was, he noticed on my desk was my cost manual. And he said, what's that for? And I said, well, just to be thorough and to advertise to my client that I'm being thorough. I do the cost approach. We don't really use it to find value, but it's being thorough, I thought. And he said, well, why don't we use cost as a benchmark? And a little light bulb flashed because a friend of mine who's an MAI like yourself once mentioned the word depreciated cost. And I thought, huh, I better read about that. So John and I together worked up a system that's now known as Solomon. We're partners in an LLC named Solomon Appraisal. And he does the data work and I do, or the programming, I do the customer training and so on. But we help appraisers support every adjustment in the grid. And that's a hot topic right now because appraisers are getting downward pressure. They're being questioned. How did you get the garage adjustment? How did you get the bath adjustment, right? So we can help people do that. And we've been very busy, growing quickly right now because it's a hot topic in the industry. I think there's this trend toward objectivity. You and I have sat in meetings where the GSEs were presenting, where they've said we've gotten past the uh, the part about solving the language issues, right? People have cleaned up their reports from saying words that could be interpreted as being biased. Not that I don't think that really they were, but the next step in that crusade against bias is objectivity in reporting. So you and I have worked on several videos about that, and that's what appraisers are needing right now. They're needing to show their work to prove that they're not being biased. not basing an adjustment on a subjective idea.
Okay, Scott, if somebody needed to work with you or Solomon Adjustments, what's your website?
It's I guess we don't have to say that anymore, right? People
No,
understand that.
yeah.
SolomonAppraisal.com. SolomonAppraisal.com.
Okay, SolomonAppraisal.com. And those of you watching this is not the first time you'll see this on the screen, and we'll give you Scott's phone number and email later on. All right, Scott, you had mentioned that we've talked about various things before, various topics, various times. Let's get to some questions that have come in to you in your capacity as what amounts to a consultant to appraisers. And go ahead and feel free to answer them or not answer them, as the case may be. And then as we wrap this thing up in a few minutes, we'll get back specifically to Solomon adjustments. So, one of the questions that you indicated that has come into you in the past is the appraiser said, is a 1 year old comp better than a 6 month old comp? And if so, why?
Well, the I live in a market that's very cyclical, and it's you can go back years and years, and it peaks in June and it bottoms out in January. So picture yourself doing an appraisal in April or May or June, and your best comps sold in January. There's been a huge change in the market, maybe $50,000 since just January. But if you look back to last June, it's only a 3% change, much more reasonable. So I don't think the GSEs are ready for this yet, but sometimes I think in a seasonal market, the prior, the same month from the prior year might be more indicative of an adjustment for market change than the most recent sale, which might be from a market that was depressed by, in our case, the weather. I had an uncle that sold real estate that said nothing happens between Thanksgiving and the Super Bowl. And he was right. People didn't get out and look at houses in February, January, right? They quit looking in the fall and they got really active again in the spring. So in my experience, trying to do a spring or a summer appraisal and I have comps from last fall, that's a problem.
Yeah, St. Paul, Minneapolis are not known for their mild, temperate, palm tree laden winters. Yeah, that's true.
Now we're experiencing our best month for weather right now, September.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So your response is, yeah, it may be. And therefore, it requires analysis of both a 6 month old sale and a 1 year old sale to determine which one you're going to use as a comp. Okay. All right. Okay. Here's another question that you indicated came in. Are GSE appraisers, in other words, appraisers who do most of their work for the GSEs, sellers in a buyer's market? And if so, why?
I would say right now we are sellers selling our appraisal services. There's a gap in the number of appraisers to the number of loans being made that there's far more appraisers than there are loans, right? So appraisers are in a buyer's market. The people that are buying the appraisals are in control. And those are the AMCs and so on. They've got 10 appraisers that would love to have that next job. Therefore, they don't have to pay a premium price like they would have a few years ago when it was the opposite. There were more assignments than there were appraisers.
Do you see that changing anytime soon?
I am kind of, I read some data yesterday, and this was from a lender. They said that their survey showed 75% of the people that they surveyed could not make a move until rates got below 5%. That's a lot of people. You know, people that had refied or bought back in the 3 and 4% time frame, their mortgage cost would skyrocket if they tried to refi now in the 6 or 7 range, right? It's twice as much money per month to handle that debt. So I'm not sure when that's going to occur. I think there's got to be Um, Probably appraisers leaving the industry, sadly. They're maybe aging out and not wanting to take on the new technology. But I do think there's more appraisers than there are loans in general. I'm reminded of this old joke about the the three hunters that are being chased out of the woods by the big ferocious bear. And the idea is that you don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun the slowest hunter, right? So you've got to step up your game to be the appraiser that can provide a support for all your adjustments, be very objective in your reporting. And I think those are the ones that are going to survive.
Okay, let's. I've got some more questions, but let me follow up. Okay, so we got to outrun the slowest hunter. All right. Um, Talk about upping your game, and go ahead and feel free to talk about Solomon. But if an appraiser were to use Solomon, how is what you and John do going to help that appraiser update, or excuse me, up his or her game?
Right. Well, it's a process. You start at the top of the grid and you've got what I would call the equivalence adjustments. So you adjust for things like concessions, and that's a big topic now with compensation for brokers getting involved in that. And then also adjusting for market change. And once you've made those adjustments, then those sale prices have become adjusted sale prices at the bottom of the grid, correct? So we're making progress. Then you do the adjustments at the bottom half of the grid that are related to the cost of the building, because with Solomon, you measure the percentage of depreciation. Therefore, you measure the, as we call it, the percent good or the remaining life of the building. Let's say it's 75%. And then go to the cost manual, which is, of course, unbiased third-party data. And if the cost of a bathroom is 12,000 and the market's paying 75%, then that's supporting a $9,000 adjustment. So you can go through and do all the adjustments related to the building, like the bathroom, the GLA, the basement, if you have those, basement size, basement finish, garage stalls, porches, decks, all the features that show up in your grid. And when you've completed those adjustments, now you've used a recognized method to get to different adjusted sale prices. And those adjusted sale prices can be used to do adjusted pairs, whatever fits. I mean, you have to be kind of reading the grid. So you can use two of those comps to do an adjusted pair for the remaining difference, or you can use three or four comps to do sensitivity analysis to find things like site size, age, condition, quality, location, what I would call the non-numerical adjustments, right? We have to rank things, but they don't. I guess site size has a natural number we can adjust, a number of square feet or acres. So that's the idea. Is you start off with we use group data to do the site adjust or the condition adjustment, or excuse me, the market change adjustment. Then we do depreciated cost, another recognized method, and then we skip down to adjusted pairs and sensitivity analysis. And when you've done that, you've completed the grid. Everything's supported, everything on a chart.
Okay. Hold that thought because we're going to come back to those. All right. Another question that's come in. Waivers and alternative valuation methods are absorbing the low complexity work. What are the ramifications of this to the boots on the ground appraiser today? And just to put this into context, we're recording this in the first week of September of 2024.
Well, I was just doing a demo, and I do those for free with people that are subscribers or wanting to subscribe. And I was taking the appraiser from Michigan through the process, and I just used a simple, 1,200 square foot raised ranch house. We call them split entries. And as I was going through that, we were talking about how, yeah, those are the easy ones that we used to get assignments for, right? You could do more than one a day of those. Now those are being absorbed again by the alternate methods, the data collectors, who can just look at the condition of the house. And because the GSEs have so much data, condition is the only difference in a neighborhood that's very homogeneous. So they pretty much know the value well enough to handle a refi for somebody who has still some equity left in the house. I think where appraisers are going to be used is where they are not homogeneous houses and where the AMC or the lender has no idea what the value is. So it takes a boots on the ground appraiser in the house to properly do that appraisal. Not so much like back in the good old days, I would get orders for a $200,000 house where they were borrowing 10,000 and they only owed 100 on it, right? What sense did that make? Well, it made sense to me because I got to bill, for that appraisal. Didn't make sense to the bank, didn't make sense to the homeowner. And I think as data has become more and more available, it's easier for the lender to do that. When I started, we had a phone book size comp book like this that would be published once a week. And all we had is an exterior black and white photo of the comp or the subject, right? The interior was, we were blind to that. Well, now there's 50 photos for every house.
All right. Continuing with this question, if the work remaining is for the more complex, more out of the way, more out of the ordinary, harder to value properties, what should the boots on the ground appraiser do in order to start getting those assignments, assuming the appraiser isn't already getting them?
Right. Well, the obvious, I mean, the average appraiser needs more private work. And the private work is typically an estate or a divorce or maybe, some kind of whenever there's conflicting interest in the value of two different owners in the property, dad dies, there's three kids, the son wants to buy the house and the two sisters want their fair share, right? So I've done a number of those. The problem is it's people are buying their first appraisal when they're looking for somebody, and they look in the old days they look in the phone book. Now they look on the internet. So having a good internet website that people can find you for that kind of work is important. I think more important, and I've seen we've got mutual friends that have done this over the years for 15, 20 years, they've been doing weekly or monthly lunch and learns at agencies that have many appraisers or many agents, and they teach about appraisal to the agents. That's what's in it for the agent, and they're not expecting to get any money out of that, but they do have a new connection that sooner or later they're going to have a client of theirs that has a life change that requires an appraisal. So it's building that referral network of agents. And I've known people that have been doing that for 15, 20 years, and all they do is private work. Scottsdale, Arizona, Newport Beach, California, places like that. Might be a little bit more difficult out in the country someplace in Nebraska, maybe. But if you have the time, it's a long that crop takes as long as planting a forest to make lumber, right? You have to do it for years and years. So you might starve to death in the meantime. The second approach that's faster, it's not the fastest, but I met an appraiser in Pennsylvania. Her name is Carol Henderson, and she has a company called Zen Appraisal. And what she did during COVID is taught herself how to get organic search results from when people go to the internet looking for an appraiser, she pops up. She's got a lot of qualifications, a lot. She actually hired a third appraiser now just doing private work. So, and she's near Philadelphia, again, big population center, but she's an expert at getting that organic search result. And I don't know how to do that. She does. She's told me, well, first thing, you've got to post every day on several different media sites. but they don't have to be different posts. You can do the same preparation and put it on LinkedIn, put it on Facebook, put it on whatever network you work with. So that's the second way. That's shorter. That's not as doesn't take as long as meeting 1,000 agents that refer one job a year. But that's I mean, she's cracked the code for how to do that. In the third way, I met a gentleman at the Las Vegas show. I think I told you about him. His name is Brandon Drake. His company is called Lead Drop. And what they do is they use AdWords, which is a way that Google has figured out. That's how Google got to be so valuable, is that they could sell advertising, right? That's their model. They sell ads in the form of search results. And what they'll do is test words that work well to attract the kind of business that appraiser wants. Maybe they'll test the word estate planning. Maybe it's date of death. Maybe it's divorce, whatever it is. But he can put together a plan based on his experience and test it before you pay him. And then once it's proven, you do pay him quite a bit of money. And you, on top of that, have to pay for the AdWords from Google. So it's like having an ad agency for a business. You've got a digital marketing agency sending you leads. And it works. It's quick, but it's expensive. So you've kind of got your choice of getting out in front of people and talking for 15 years, or if you're more like me, not wanting to go out and meet groups of people, maybe you try to figure out how to do that website so that you get the organic search results. And if you have more time or more money than time, then maybe hire a digital agency that, like Brandon, that can do that for you.
Scott, let's talk a little bit about, let's get back to adjustments. Okay, in the old days, you stood up and you asked a question. Okay, how much do I adjust for fireplace? And somebody said, try $1,200. Okay, and you wrote down $1,200 and you went off and nobody said anything. All right, now this is not to say that the adjustment may not be $1,200. It very well may be. But given what you've said, the GSEs are now expecting us to support our adjustments. So take a minute and explain to us how, for example, Solomon would figure out that the fireplace adds $1,200 or $1,500 or $2,500 or nothing for that matter.
Right. Well, if it does add value, it can be done with depreciated cost. The idea is you find out what percentage of cost the market is paying and what the quality is of the subject. And I've just aligned the quality of fireplace to be equal to the quality of the house, which I know isn't always true. You could have a fabulous fireplace in an average house, right? But I just try to make it simple. So if it's a luxury house, it will have a luxury fireplace. So let's get back to reality and say, okay, I've got a Q4. A fireplace costs $3,200 new. If the market's paying 70% of cost, you'd have to do the math, but it comes out to around $2,500 for that fireplace, assuming the fireplace is depreciating at the same rate as the whole house, which is another question, but at least you've done your work, right? And then we've got a feature that you can find, you can enter your idea about functional depreciation. Like in my market, I just know that the second fireplace is not worth as much as the first. Maybe it's worth half as much. Maybe it's worth nothing because the people that like fireplaces only want one for some reason. So you can do that with cost data. Another way is to use sensitivity analysis. You do all the other adjustments that you can, and then try to figure out the correlation between adjusted sale prices and the fireplace count. And you will get a chart from our software that gives you something called the coefficient of determination, that little R square. And if it's below 0.4, that means there's no relationship. If it's 80, yeah, then you would make the adjustment and it will tell you what the adjustment is. So there's two ways to come about it.
From from a standpoint of cost, is the appraiser, let me back up a little bit, excuse me. In looking at the cost, and let's go with a 3,200 and then 2,500 bucks. Is the appraiser under any ethical or moral obligation to support that adjustment via another approach, or is one approach sufficient?
I think one is fine. They just want us to support our adjustments. As you and our audience can imagine, being able to reconcile from two different methods might be better. So we have another app built into Solomon that's based on surveys of appraisers, and it's not a primary means of adjustment. It's secondary. It can't be used as your lead example, right? But let's say we're talking about a pool. We've got a survey that shows what a pool is worth as a percentage of the price of a house in different, warm winters, cold winters, and mild winters, for instance, 3 different surveys. And the appraisers are not market experts in each market, but we found that according to a guy named Francis Galton, if you have at least 30 non-experts answer a survey question that has a number for an answer, and then you find the average of their guesses, you'll have a better result than asking one expert. So we use surveys as a way to, as kind of a sanity check on the adjustments that we've found either through adjusted pairs or sensitivity.
From a standpoint of an appraiser who might want to consider Solomon before jumping in, you've got various videos out there on
Right. Yeah. The,
various
the
sites.
website has a tab that says videos, or I can't remember exactly what it says, but it's a tab that has video links underneath it. And there's like 3 or 4, but there's hundreds in the that I've accumulated over the last 8 years that are not sorted out very well. But you can look at one of those videos that is, I think, one of the better ones, and you can find um, my YouTube site that way and watch videos until you sleep about how to do adjustments.
So you've got videos not only, excuse me, you can access your videos not only via your website, but then you've got stuff on YouTube as well.
Right. The ones that are on my website are actually YouTube videos that are linked. And when you open up our website, if you scroll down, you'll see that that image on the front page is actually a video that was spoken by yourself, right? Tim did the narration on that for most of it, and then I followed up at the end. But it explains the concept of depreciated cost, how we get the numbers.
Now, again, speaking of videos, have you got anything that you've recently posted, or you've got any classes coming up in the near future? I know you're getting ready to go on a very nice, much needed vacation. So when you get back, what have you got planned from that standpoint?
Well, my partner John just came up with a new idea for a feature that helps appraisers again in this private world of doing appraisal. They might want to do a retrospective, right? So what was the cost in 2022? Well, now we've got a way to select the year that you want the cost data, which cost data you want to use by year. We've only got 3 years of data in that format right now, but anyway, that's a new feature. I'm sure there'll be a video. The most, I think the most important video is called the comprehensive video. It's linked on our website. It's 32 minutes long, but you can, on the scroll bar down at the bottom, you can find the chapters that you want, so you don't have to watch everything to get to the place you need to be.
And how long was that? You said 32
It's like
minutes?
32 minutes, but it's a
All right.
bunch of little 4 or 5 minute videos, all done in the order that they're presented in the calculator in Solomon.
Okay. Now, in the past, I know you've spoken to the Ohio Coalition of Appraisal Professionals. I think you spoke in Washington State not too long ago. Do you have anything like that coming up in the near future?
I don't have anything planned. I just, I'm going to miss um, the summit. And I wasn't on the docket at Val Expo. That's some pretty high-end stuff. I mean, they're interviewing the former head of FN, FM, what is it? FHFA, people of that level. But I do travel every once in a while. I'm hoping to get to Texas for the ATA. That's been kind of a hotbed. We've got a bunch of customers down there, and I know quite a few instructors, and I know that I've heard you're planning to be there. But I'm usually at the summit and Axe. So I plan to be at Axe, which is the one in Texas.
And that's April of 25, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. Well, Scott, again, so we can put it up on the screen so everybody can see it. What is your website?
It's solomonappraisal.com.
Okay. And if you would be so kind, may we have your email address?
SCULLEN, the number 2 at Comcast.net.
Okay. S Cullen,
2
S Cullen 2 at Comcast.
Comcast.net.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, we'll get that up there so everybody can see it. All right. Scott, well, thank you. Before we sign off, anything else you need to add?
Well, I should have stated that at that website, you can subscribe as a free trial user. So you can get 14 days free, and then you can decide which direction you want to go.
All right. So you're available for private or group consultation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Send me an email and we'll get it on the calendar.
All right. Excellent. Well, Scott, thank you. I appreciate your time. And uh, enjoy your vacation. And with any luck, we'll see you in April in San Antonio. So, Scott, thank you very much. My best to your family.
All right. I appreciate that, Tim. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. See you later.